Hello, everyone, and welcome to this masterclass on Solicitor and Barrister How to Choose with BPP University. We've got an excellent panel today, and you're very lucky to have these speakers join us today, so please make the most out of this session. So we always start our masterclasses with our learning outcomes. So by the end of this masterclass, you should understand the key differences between the solicitor and barrister career paths, including the day-to-day work. Learn how to identify the skills and attributes that align with each profession and reflect on where your strengths fit best. And then also just feel more confident in making an informed decision about which legal career path is right for you.
Thank you, Dimitar. So, welcome. We've got a really great session ahead. Let me introduce myself. So my name is Charlotte Wanendeya, and I'm the head of law at BPP Law School in London Central in Holborn. I was a solicitor at Clifford Chance, but I also ran the bar programme at BPP for over 10 years. So I know about both sides of the profession, and I'm also the vice chair of the City of London Law Society. So I'm very involved on the city solicitor side too. So that's me. I'm just going to ask the panellists to introduce themselves as they appear on my screen. Well, we'll start ladies first, actually. Lyana.
Hello, I'm Lyana Chan. I'm currently a law tutor on the bar training course based in Manchester. I teach submission advocacy. Prior to joining BPP, I was a practicing family law barrister on the Northern Circuit. And prior to becoming a barrister, I was also a solicitor, so I cross-qualified. I trained in private practice. I then moved into local government, and then from local government, I went to the bar.
Brilliant, thank you. And John?
Morning, well, I say morning.
Hold on. We've got a John and a Jonathan. Jonathan Chibafa, you're going to be Jonathan, and John Dove is going to be John. Because I call you Jonathan, you know that. So, John, sorry, go ahead, John.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry, I should apologise. I said morning because I'm joining you from San Diego this morning. So dedication to the cause. So I'm a criminal barrister at Charterhouse Chambers in Liverpool. And as you can see from the tag, I'm a former solicitor. So my route to the bar was that I went to university at 18, did the bar course straight after finishing university. I applied for pupillage for a couple of years thereafter whilst working as a paralegal. And as you may or may not be aware, pupillage is pretty difficult to come by. I was getting to final round interviews and I thought I might get a pupillage, but I might not. So I hedged my bets, did an LPC and said whichever comes first, training contract or pupillage, I will take. Lo and behold, I obtained a training contract with a criminal firm. So I qualified as a criminal defence solicitor, got my higher rights of audience straight away, practiced in defence for a couple of years, then moved to the CPS for a couple of years. And then in 2023, I decided to apply to the Bar Standards Board, received a full pupillage exemption, and I've been a criminal barrister for the past 2.5 years. As you will have seen from the sign-up as well, I'm also the founder of Speed Mooting. Can I say a few words about Speed Mooting, Charlotte?
Please do.
Perfect. I'll keep it nice and brief. So you may or may not have heard of us. We're an organisation that run the largest mooting and advocacy competitions. BPP have kindly been our sponsors for several years now, and we run our in-person events at BPP centres across the country. And as I say, these are the largest mooting and advocacy competitions, but also the most accessible. So they're open to anyone, regardless of your level of experience. And alongside that, we have what we call our Legal Skills Academy, which is a programme that is aimed at both barristers or aspiring barristers and solicitors. Doesn't matter what stage you're up to, whether you're in sixth form or whether you've graduated, you can join the academy. And we run twice monthly sessions online, and that allows you to practice your advocacy and your commercial awareness in a low pressure environment. So if you want to learn more about what we do, take a look at our website, speedmooting.com.
Yeah, and if you can put that in the chat, John, you stick it in the chat so the audience know how to reach out to you. And absolutely last but not least, Jonathan.
Thank you, Charlotte. So I'm Jonathan Chibafa. I am a barrister. I practice from two principal addresses. The first is Keystone Law, which is a law firm based in the City of London, and also from Red Lion Chambers. I also have my own consulting firm called Forge ESG that focuses on providing risk and compliance advice to corporates, but also particularly recently to carbon projects in sub-Saharan Africa. I think it's helpful for me to just give you a quick introduction into my career route, because as you can observe from what I've said, it's quite multifaceted. So I was called to the bar in 2006, so 20 years ago, and that's when I first met Charlotte, because she was at BPP Law School, where I went to. I spent 6 years in chambers at Red Lion Chambers. That's where I did my pupillage and got taken on and was there for, to say, 6 years before going off on a secondment to A&O, Allen & Overy, as it then was. I then spent the next 5 or 6 years in-house at GlaxoSmithKline, the pharmaceutical company. At the time, they were dealing with a huge international investigation into their operations in China and other countries. So I led their team of bribery and corruption risk experts to understand what was going on in their supply chain in terms of this risk. And that was a really, I think, transformational time in my career, because it really taught me how businesses work, I guess. I then did a short stint at Tesco PLC as legal counsel, again, dealing with business integrity issues. I then returned to private practice with Squire Patton Boggs, who are a US law firm. They were called Hammonds before, so they've got quite a British pedigree here in the UK, but they're US headquartered. And then I left Squires about 2 years ago, joined Keystone. I then also rejoined Chambers, Red Lion Chambers, as an associate tenant. So my practice is both in the context of a law firm with Keystone Law, but also obviously with Chambers on an associate tenant basis. And as I said, I do some consulting with my own consultancy for GSG. And I'll get into that later on, but I think it just shows you some of the flexibility that now exists in the profession. And I think that's where the future of the profession is heading.
Yeah, brilliant. Now, audience, you can see therefore these 3 panelists, it couldn't be better for you, because they've got real understanding of both sides of the profession. We'll get into the questions, but 2 things from what 2 of our panelists have said. When John was talking about, I'll take whichever one, John Dove, I'll take whichever one comes first, the pupillage, or I'll do the LPC and become a solicitor. It's interesting. I've heard students now saying the SQE is so difficult, the new regime. Do I sort of strategically do the bar exams and go through that way? Well, I wouldn't say that's your deciding factor, but I understand why the questions come about. I'd say the bar is also super difficult. Let's not forget, the bar was actually the first one who had the centralised exams, and then the SQE jumped on, sort of followed suit. So, and the second one was something Jonathan Chibafa said about, it really taught me how businesses work when he was in-house. And I think that is the key thing, and it's a nice intro into the questions, that whether you're going down the solicitor route or whether you're going down the barrister route, wow, the key thing these days is truly understanding that both routes, you've got to understand law as a business, and all the more so in this fast-paced AI world, that the differentiator is understanding that it's a business. That's what the clients will need. Okay, so there we go. Let's dive straight in. First of all, understanding the role of a solicitor and a barrister. So let's do quick fire answers. Lyana, I'm going to begin with you. Again, ladies first. What does the day-to-day work of a solicitor look like? How would you describe the day-to-day work briefly?
So I am coming at this from the perspective of working in a general high street practice as opposed to a big commercial firm or corporate practice. But certainly in my experience as a solicitor in general high street practice, my day-to-day and what I anticipate a lot of certainly trainee solicitors' day-to-day roles would be involvement in team meetings, engaging and advising clients regularly who sometimes they're, depending again on your firm, they are walk through the door type clients who literally are passing by and they need advice on, I don't know, a criminal matter or a family matter. Or you might have a diary full of meetings and conferences with clients. So you're the first port of call for the client. It could involve drafting statements, drafting attendance notes, pleadings, following on from those conference meetings, engaging in training, providing training, setting training up, instructing counsel, choosing who counsel might be, having a conversation with counsel depending on what the issue is. But pretty packed, office-based. I mean, I say office-based, that I know that's changed a lot since COVID, and the way we work, it's a much more agile, flexible way of working. Certainly back in my day, I was pretty much I was office-based 100% of the time, both in private practice and when I went into local government. But it was pretty, a 9 to 5. I pretty much worked 9 to 5, and it was a mix of meetings, team meetings with clients, meetings with clients, drafting advice, emailing advice, drafting documents, helping junior members of the team or members of the admin team with queries and to help progress case files.
Okay, so wide and varied from your experience.
Absolutely.
Lyana, obviously, if it was, say, a big law city firm, you're probably going to get involved in just one small part and be in just see one aspect of it. So that's the big difference between big firms and smaller ones.
Yeah.
And John Dove, that is, same for barristers. So very briefly, day-to-day work of a barrister, and any contrast with what Lyana said?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a lot more sort of independent. And what I mean by that is because you work for yourself. So I don't know if our attendees know this, but as a barrister, you are self-employed within chambers. So let's say it's a day when I'm not trialing. So let's say I'm doing non-trial work. The night before, you'll receive various papers or access to the cases online. So you might find the following day you've got, a bail application, a sentence, a PCPH. You've got a couple of cases in. So the night before is normally when you'll prepare for those cases. When you're very young, that will take you a long time. But as you get more experienced, you can prepare much more quickly for more cases. So you do your preparation the night before. You'll then go to court. If you've got multiple cases like that, you'll probably find that you're going to be in a local court. So hopefully travel isn't too long. Get to court. You'll meet your clients. So you might have some clients who are on remand. So you go down to the cells and go and see them. You might have clients who are on bail. So you'll meet them in the foyer and take them into a conference room. So you'll meet with your various clients. And then during the course of the day, you will do those hearings. So you might be in different courtrooms within the same court building. And you need to be able to juggle your time. So you need to go and see the ushers from the different courts and make sure. You might say, well, can I go on last in this court because I'm in another court early in the morning? You'll do those hearings. And then when you get home, you will type up your attendance notes and send those off to the solicitor. And then the ball starts rolling again. You'll do your preparation again for the next day. So they're the days when you are not trialing. If you've got a trial, it's sometimes a little bit easier because let's say you've got a 2-week trial, you do all your preparation beforehand in the run up to it. And then there tends to be less work of an evening because you've front loaded all of the preparation. But as I say, the key difference really is that independence. You're working for yourself. But of course, you do have your professional client there. So you need to make sure that you get in that attendance note off to them as soon as possible. Or in my case, if I can't do that, I will ring the solicitor that day and let them know what has happened if I can't do the attendance note for any reason. But that's a sort of typical day for a criminal barrister.
Brilliant. So let's just round up a bit on the role of solicitor and barrister with Jonathan. Would you say, well, we heard what John said there about the key differences. Did you want to add anything to that? Anything about the key differences in culture or responsibility or just reality of life at the bar? Just sort of summing up on understanding the role of solicitor and barrister, really, Jonathan.
Yeah, I think the point John made is a really important one, and I'll just focus on that in terms of at the bar, you are independent, you are your own individual business in amongst a set of chambers. And so the responsibility of managing your workload, of managing your professional clients, managing your tax affairs, your accounts, and all of that is down to you as an individual. And I think that's so important to emphasize that, I think that working as a solicitor, there's more comfort in the institution of a law firm in terms of things that are done for you, like you've got a paycheck at the end of the month, you know what you're getting paid, you've got a pension. I can't tell you the number of barristers I talk to now who are 20 years call, 25 years call, who haven't got round to sorting out a pension. Okay, it's quite crazy if you really think about it, that's allowed to happen. But the point is, it is your own responsibility and nobody will make you do it. So I think those people who end up at the bar or think about going to the bar, make sure that you fully understand that situation and that you protect yourself from this future risk of finding yourself in financial difficulty because you haven't made the decisions that your fellow lawyers who are solicitors didn't even have to make because it's all sorted for them, by the law firm and so on, by the system that they're in. At the bar, you get the joy of your independence, great, but with that comes the obligation to make sure that you look after yourself in terms of your finances and your tax and that sort of thing.
Brilliant. Is there anything else? Otherwise, we're going to move on to, I think what's interesting next is skills and strengths. So let's hear from Lyana on which strengths are important for someone wanting to qualify as a solicitor. Let's take solicitor first, Lyana. What strengths?
Yeah, so in terms of strengths, I think first and foremost, enjoying working with people, not just your professional colleagues, but also the lay client or the professional client. You need to be able to, I think, adaptability as well. I think that feeds into it. You've got to be able to adapt to who it is you're working with, who it is you're advising, whether that can be, as I said, your teammates, whether they're the most senior members of the leadership team or senior management, or those at the more junior end, your trainees, the paralegals, being respectful, knowing who's going to support you. As I said, that being a good team player is really key, in my view, to being a solicitor. Mm-hmm. But also being able to be human. You could be advising a young teenage mother regarding a removal of a child, but you could also be advising the professional client, director of a large corporate business. You need to be able to adapt and be able to manage your client's needs. Mm-hmm. So I would say, overall, enjoy working and being with people. It is a key skill, strength to being a solicitor.
Yeah. And again, we're seeing in this rapidly changing AI world that we keep coming back to. Sure, of course, we need the digital literacy skills, but actually this is putting into even sharper focus what you describe as the human skills, which we can now begin to talk about as the power skills, because that's what's going to really distinguish you, audience, to make your impact. Great. Jonathan, same question. What strengths are important for someone wanting to qualify as a barrister?
Yeah, when I was listening to Lyana there, I was thinking that, I think the skills she mentioned equally apply to people wanting to be barristers, right? And I think what it is that over time you develop these skills and you become better at them based on practice, frankly. If I was, though, going to answer your question, I would probably zone in on the being comfortable in making decisions, often quickly, often under pressure, is something that I think the bar particularly focuses you on. Because, when you're working for a say, a law firm in the city and so on, when you're starting out, you're quite junior, and there's a lot of layers up until the point of partner. So there's sort of a lot of delegated decision making and so on. And as a trainee, you probably make no decisions really. Maybe even as a first or second year associate, it takes a while to be that person in a team to make a decision. Whereas as a barrister, once you're on your feet in your second six pupillage, you're going to court, as John suggested, to make a bail application. You've got to make a decision about whether you're making a bail application, what advice are you giving to the client in terms of a guilty plea or not guilty plea. All sorts of decisions are required to be made by your client on your advice very, very, very early on. And I think if you're somebody who is uncomfortable with making decisions or finds that particularly difficult, it is something that you need to really correct early on, because it comes more and more and more, and there are more and more serious consequential decisions as you get more experienced. So I'd say that the decision-making aspect and being comfortable with that is a key one for barristers.
And as you said at the outset of this part of the questions, that is something, of course, that comes with experience that our audience would get more and more comfortable with. Hence the privilege of being a bit older and having the experience. That's what comes with that. We mustn't undermine experience. Okay, and John, do you have any answers for what you'd say are the most underrated skills for being successful in on both sides?
Yeah, I think one of the key skills, particularly at the bar, are people skills. So I suppose this kind of touches a little bit on what Lyana was talking about, but you need the ability to speak to people, and, it doesn't matter what area you go into, unless you're in chancery or something or corporate, you're going to be dealing with clients from a broad cross section of the public. Sometimes very educated people, sometimes not very educated people. And you need the ability to give advice in a user-friendly way that people can understand. I remember when I was at university and I went on mini pupillages with barristers, and I would sit there in the conference and they were giving very legalistic answers to the clients. And I'm thinking, I'm a law student, I just about understand what you're talking about. There's no way that a lay client will understand that. So just pure people skills are really helpful. And these are the skills that you don't build in a legal context. These are the skills that you build when you work in a bar, you work in a shop, you work in a restaurant. That's where you'll build up those skills. And I think going beyond that, some other skills that can be particularly helpful are, I think, written advocacy, and that's regardless of whether you are a solicitor or whether you are a barrister. Quite often you need to give written advice. And once again, it comes back to the same point that I was making there. If you can give your advice in a simple way that's easy to follow in a written format as well, that's also quite an underrated skill. People often talk about oral advocacy as a barrister or some of the skills that you need to be a solicitor. I think written advocacy is really, really underrated, and it's something that you're going to do on a daily basis as a barrister or a solicitor. So that really is one of those underrated skills.
Mm-hmm. That's great, John. And that kind of answers my next one, unless you want to add something to it. I was going to say advocacy is obviously a huge draw to the bar for many students. What does it look like in practice? But you've really made clear there, it's not just the oral advocacy, there's written advocacy too.
Yeah, I think in terms of how it looks in practice, it really depends on which area of law you go into. So if you're a criminal barrister, you're in court every single day, because that's how you make your money as a criminal barrister. You have to be in court on a daily basis. And as I mentioned before, some days you'll be in court and you're doing, for want of a better phrase, bits and bobs. So, a bail application, a PTPH, a sentence, whatever. Other days you'll be at trial, so it's fairly regular. And as a trial advocate, you'll do speeches, opening and closing speeches, and then, of course, your witness handling as well. If you go into other areas, so let's say you're a tax barrister, you might find that you don't go to court as often. You might find that you're only in court several times per month. And that's because the bulk of your practice is probably advisory. So people, your solicitors and your lay client will need advice on what the strategy is, how you go forwards, do we go to trial, etc. So much more of the work is written. And I think that applies probably in other areas of civil law as well, where your time is split between doing advices, doing pleadings, etc., and less time is spent in court. So I think if you want to go to the bar, one of the things to think about is, do you want to be in court every day, or would you prefer much more of a balance?
Yeah, nice. I like that. And finally, on skills and strengths, Jonathan, any tips for how to build those skills early on for our audience?
Yeah, I think, well, mooting is one obvious thing, really, really important, because it exposes students early on to a mock court situation, as it were. I think it's also important to be curious about what lawyers actually do, attending court. We are very fortunate to live in a country where 90% plus of all legal proceedings are open to the public, right? It's very unusual for any court proceedings in this country to be in camera, in other words, in private. So visit your local courts, be really curious, because that really does two things for you. First of all, it gives you an amazing insight into what the job actually involves. But also it gives you, I think, an understanding of whether or not you see yourself in that situation, okay? Or if you don't, it gives you that impetus to then go away and think, okay, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm prepared to be in that situation, if you like. So I think it's important to try and observe as often as you can court proceedings in your local courts, or if you get a chance coming to London or a big city, an appeal court or a crown court or anything like that.
Yeah, great. And the mooting, John, you've put, I hope, in the chats your mooting thing.
Yes, I put the link in for speedmooting.com.
I could see you nodding when Jonathan was saying, well, mooting's a good one. I like what Jonathan said there. I think my top word for 2026 is curiosity. My word for 2025 was reflection. And I think I'm going to say for 2026, curiosity, dear audience, is really important. So I like that. Thank you. Right, let's move on to training, finances, and competition. So John and Jonathan, let's start with John. What should aspiring barristers know about the pupillage application and building resilience? So I don't know, John, if you want to take pupillage applications, and Jonathan, you add anything on resilience. So John.
Okay, what I would say is it's never too early to start looking at pupillage applications. So different chambers have different ways of applying. So some chambers, it might be as simple as a CV and a covering letter. Others will have very extensive applications through the pupillage gateway. What I would say is start looking very early at the application forms, because then you'll get a flavour for what questions are asked on those forms. So some of the key questions you will always have are, why would you make a good barrister? So obviously I would say this, but one of the key things would be get involved in mooting, or other forms of advocacy, public speaking, etc. Because, if you can fill that in and say, well, I won the XYZ mooting competition, that's evidence of why it is that you'll be a good barrister. Other questions are things like, what scholarships or awards do you have? So the Inns of Court award scholarships, your university might give awards, etc. So start thinking early on about how do you answer those questions. Basically reverse engineer the pupillage application forms as early as you can. So even if you're in first year, start looking at that and think about, well, 2-3 years down the line, how will I answer those questions? And you can cross-reference it with the chambers you think you might want to apply to. So go onto their website, look at their junior barristers, look at what they've got in their profile. And if you see any good experiences there, try and follow in their footsteps, because they've obviously been successful in the pupillage applications. And once again, it always comes back to reverse engineering the form and thinking about, in 3 years' time when I'm applying, how will I answer those questions?
Terrific, yeah. I always say keep a notebook for, like this session here, you should be making notes. And if you fill that with all the things you go to, you'll have lots for your applications and your interviews. Jonathan, anything you want to add, or specifically on building resilience, which is obviously something that that the pupillage application will be looking for?
Yeah, look, I think, you know, I know we'll speak about competition in a minute, but it's really important that you are able to make yourself stand out from the crowd. And I think understanding, as John said there, what are the expectations, what are the questions that are being asked, looking at the profiles of the individuals that the Chambers has taken on in the last 5-6 years, what have they done? Because that's an amazing source of intelligence to help you to gauge where you need to be in order to be a competitive candidate in the process. I think it's important to also show that you've got interests outside of your studies, you know, whatever you're doing, if you're working, whatever. Because I think that shows balance. It shows that you take care of yourself and your mental health and your well-being, which increasingly are becoming really, really important, actually. I didn't really start doing any sort of meaningful exercise or anything until maybe in my 30s even. And that's one thing that I kind of wish I had done sooner, whether that's yoga or running or whatever else. Because I think being able to demonstrate that you are able to take yourself away from the daily requirements, if you like, and provide time for yourself, I think evidences that you are focused on your resilience and your well-being and so on. So I do think being able to show balance, you know, in who you are is important.
Yeah, and that we are 3D. It's not just for this career. We need to show that we're 3D, and that's what's going to distinguish you. Great, thank you. And Lyana, on same question, but about training contracts. What should aspiring solicitors know about training contract applications?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was listening very closely to what John and Jonathan have just said, and a lot of what they've both said, I would echo actually for aspiring solicitors. Certainly, you want to be thinking early doors about the application process. Again, very much like Chambers, depending on the firm you want to be applying for, they'll have a different application process. Lots of the bigger firms, the commercial firms, the international firms will have a timed application process. You need to know when the deadlines are for making those applications. For the smaller firms or the more regional firms, there might not be a specific timed process, but you want to make those inquiries to find out, you know, when those applications need to be in by. So early planning, preparation. Know what firm you want to be applying for. Do your research. As John said with Chambers, same for solicitors firms. You want to go onto the websites, find out about those firms, know what areas they cover. Why do those areas interest you? Why do you think you're going to be good in practice in those particular areas, whether it's high street type work or more commercial corporate type work as well. So make sure you know your firm. Don't just fire off blanket applications with general hopes that, you know, you're going to get picked, because you're not. The process is so competitive, and as it was years ago when I applied, years and years ago it was competitive. It's even more so now, I imagine. So really put in the preparation and the graft and the groundwork before you do make those applications, because those blanket applications, or if they're not focused enough or specific enough, that you'll fall to the bottom of the pile and you'll get sifted out. As very strict sifting and selection processes happen, take place. You want to give your application the edge. You want to give yourself a fighting chance of making it through that initial sifting process.
Even more specifically than that, we would say to our students, look, it's not good enough to know the website inside out for the chambers or the law firm. You've got to then dig even deeper than that. Anyone can get stuff off the website. You're going to be the same as everyone else. You've got to go further, look at the lawyers within it, zoom in on that, dig deep dive to really distinguish. Okay, great. Then,
Charlotte, can I just sorry to cut across you? Can I just in terms of the resilience for solicitors as well? I would echo what Jonathan said for barristers. It's really important that you're going to get rejection. Well, there will be rejections. Try not to get disheartened by it, but it's really important to prioritise your well-being and your own mental health. And I really echo what Jonathan says about, show balance, show you have interest outside of the law as well, but also for your own well-being, engage in exercise, walks, yoga, whatever it is, spend time with family and friends. Don't just, put everything into applications, because you're not going to have a balanced life in that respect, and it will be rejection will be harder as well.
Yeah. I just got to get used to it. Yeah. Okay, we're going to talk. Well, I will a little bit, and I'm going to ask you, even though it was some time ago, how you funded your studies. But I guess I'm the person who knows a lot about this. So for our audience, how to fund your studies, whether it's the solicitor's route or the barrister's route, yes, it's going to be expensive. There are all sorts of ways. So, for example, BPP, of course, has scholarships and bursaries. The Inns of Court, if you're going down the barrister route, the Inns of Court have got loads of money. So look into their scholarships as well. So 1, scholarships. 2, certainly at BPP, and I think many other providers, you can turn your bar course or solicitor course studies into a master's program, which then, if you're eligible for student loan company funding, you will be able to access that funding. Brackets, beware of the absolute scam that is student loan company interest rates, and it may be that private loans is beneficial, so it's worth checking out. She says, with 2 daughters who have massive student loan company debts, it's a scandal. Right, I'll get off that one. So we've got scholarships, we've got loans, SQE and the bar. There are various hardship funds, so make sure you look at those. Part-time study, nice and simple. Here's my words of wisdom. Life is not a race, guys. And everybody thinks that it's a race. We've got to do it as quickly as possible. It is not a race, and you can do it part-time. That means you can get a full-time job. We've heard everyone talk about transferable skills. Doesn't even have to be in the law necessarily. It would be great if it was, but part-time study so that you can do work as well. Obvious one, living with relatives. Don't have to pay those awful rents. Gap year, so take a year out and earn money. I don't mean go traveling the world, alas, but earning some money in your year off to come back and pay for it. Another thing we do at BPP is we have campus ambassadors, and they get paid various amounts for helping out with stuff. And it also gives you the inside story and really gets you in tune with all this stuff we're talking about today. So that's another good one. Very briefly, if it's relevant, Jonathan, Lyana and John, how did you fund your studies? Because my goodness, it's not cheap and never was even back in the day, but it's way worse now. Sorry, guys.
So I got a scholarship actually from Middle Temple. And in fact, the choice of inn for me was based partly on the fact that Middle Temple, at the time anyway, was the only inn that guaranteed everybody an interview. And I was coming from the bar from a situation where I wasn't from a sort of, what would you call a red brick or Oxbridge background. I went to Kingston University, ex-Polytechnic. I grew up in Zimbabwe. I'd been in this country for about 4 years when I was applying for bar school. And I thought to myself, okay, I need to be heard in order to give myself the best chance. Okay, if someone is sifting through an application, they might miss me. And that formed the decision to apply for Middle Temple, as I say, because they were guaranteeing interviews. And I was fortunate enough to get a Queen Mother scholarship, which included accommodation in Middle Temple for a year on the bar school, and full fees in that time. And what was interesting about that was that because I got this prestigious scholarship, I got a high award for my fees. But there are students who also got the same scholarship, but then once you get the scholarship, they then test your means. So I got the full whack because I had no other means. But some of my friends who were from wealthier backgrounds got £1 nominal amount, but bestowing them the scholarship because they had shown that they're great candidates, but they did not need the money. So it's a really interesting system, I think, which is a fair way of making sure the students who are in need the most are the ones who get the actual financial benefit of the scholarships.
Yeah. And I would add to that, Jonathan, certainly at BPP, because I do a lot of work on this, our BPP scholarships are sure, of course, there's academic excellence, of course. But let me tell you, audience, it is much wider than that. Our values at BPP are all about social mobility, all about helping students who need that funding. So check out our scholarships and tell us your story. You know, what is your story? No one's got your story. And as Jonathan said, I'm using his words, make sure you make yourself stand out so you're not missed. Lyana, what about you? How did you fund?
It was a mixture of student loan. So the LPC was, well, the LPC as it was then, it's now the SQE, was student loan funding, and then some family, you know, my parents' funding helped me out as well. Obviously, when I transferred to the bar, so I didn't do the bar course. I did the BTC, the bar transfer test, and I was working at the time. So I think when I looked into available scholarships, I didn't actually qualify for any. So yeah, it was private funding then.
Yeah. And John?
Yeah, so I took out a loan for the bar course. So I don't know if they still exist, but back in the days when I did it, sound old saying that, but back when I did it, I think the only way you could fund the bar course were there were two private banks that offered specific bar course loans. And the deal was you borrow the money and then you had 13 months where you weren't paying anything back, so the bar course plus 1 month, and then literally a month afterwards you had to start repaying. So literally the day I finished the bar course, I had to get a job pretty much right away in the law to start repaying that. And then in terms of my LPC, which I did a few years later, I'd just been saving up over that time. So because I've been working, so I just paid cash for the LPC.
Yeah. I think we've got to be mindful for today's youngsters with this student loans company thing. It is really difficult. You know, we're in different times and we know it's a scandal, but it does need looking at because it is a worry. But what I'm saying is there are other ways to fund it. There are ways to fund it. So please don't worry too much about it.
Also, it's just worth saying that obviously a lot of law firms pay for all of this, right?
Thank you. That's exactly what I meant to add, Jonathan. Thank you for reminding me. So yes, the solicitor route, if you are able, then a lot of the solicitor firms will sponsor you through it. In other words, pay for your fees and even your maintenance. So that's the first thing if you're going down the solicitor route. It tends to be the bigger firms, but a lot of them do. And you're absolutely, you know, that's the best way, of course. But remember what I said, Charlotte's wise words, life is not a race. So you don't need to race there. You can get the money. John Dove talked about he had saved up through working. So you can do that. Right. I can see it's already 10:02. I did want to touch on, so these answers have to be really succinct, careers and future prospects. So I think Jonathan, maybe for this, once qualified as a barrister, are there opportunities to move in-house? Or into other roles? And clearly the three of you have shown that. But Jonathan, any thoughts on that very briefly?
Yeah, look, I think between us, you can see the absolute evidence of the fluidity and the flexibility around all of this, you know. And actually my sense is that we will see, perhaps not in my professional lifetime, but a fused profession, actually. I work as a lawyer in a city law firm whilst I'm being regulated by the Bar Council, the Bar Standards Board. That wasn't possible 15 years ago, right? So there's been all these changes and so on. So I think that choose what you think is best for you now, but don't in any way think that is it. Because once you start, for whatever reason, there'll be other opportunities, or things will develop differently for you. So I guess that's a way of saying, don't be overweighed by the decision.
Yeah,
just go with the flow.
I think that's right, and especially for this generation, we know they're going to have careers with very different things going on in them. And there is such a thing, and it is the technical name, squiggly careers. So it's not necessarily, we're no longer looking at going up, up, up. There's a cross and all sorts of routes. So yeah, as Jonathan says, John, Lyana and Jonathan are the evidence that there's not one set way. And Lyana, for example, we heard you say you did the bar, but then you did the bar transfer you did the LPC and then you did the bar transfer test. I've got it the right way around. Yeah. So that's a different way of doing it as well. I think we were going to talk about lifestyle considerations, but I think we covered that in the first bit, like the thing about, well, frankly, if I'm at the bar, I'm likely to be self-employed. There are some exceptions to that, of course, and with that come certain insecurities. But on the other hand, might suit you if you're looking for that freedom to be autonomous. So there are various things to consider there. Kind of concluding how to decide. So one question each here, and then we'll look at, I know there are questions in the chat. So John, what questions should students be asking themselves before choosing between solicitor and barrister?
I think the first thing is, what level of client contact do you want? So obviously I've practiced as a solicitor and a barrister. When I was a solicitor, you're the first point of contact for the client. So the client is thinking, oh, I want an update on my case. I've got this random question. They can phone up the law firm and, they'll get through, should be able to get through to you and have a chat with you. So you've got that contact all the time. As a barrister, the only time I really meet the clients is at a court hearing, or if the solicitors arrange a specific conference with me. Conference is a fancy word for a meeting in law. So decide what level of client contact you want. Do you want to be there all the way throughout? Do you want to be the daily point of contact, or do you want to be just meeting the clients when you need to? How much advocacy do you want to do? So as a barrister, advocacy is the key part of your job. As a solicitor, there are opportunities for advocacy these days, and there are some solicitors that do advocacy on a daily basis. But what you'll find as a general rule is that there are fewer opportunities as a solicitor. Things are changing, but as a barrister, you're going to have more of a focus on advocacy. And then lastly, we've talked about this. What level of independence do you want? Do you want to work for a firm where you've got an employer, you've got a boss, you've got a task list, you're told what to do? Or are you able to be much more disciplined and control your own time? So they're some of the key questions, I would say, that you should be asking yourself.
Great, yeah. And as John said, of course, audience, it depends which area of work you go into. It's going to vary too. So we're talking very general terms here. Lyana, again, in conclusion, what are the best low-risk ways to experience both sides of the profession as someone starting out and not sure?
Well, Jonathan covered some of this earlier on with, avail yourself to opportunities to take part in mooting competitions, for example. There are a lot of solicitors firms offer vacation placements. Again, I know there's a lot of them have a strict time scale to apply for those, but I think generally they run maybe twice a year. So, do your research, apply for vacation placements, or just write a letter to solicitors firms, contact them and ask, can you do some work experience with them or spend a few days with them? Mini pupilages are a good way to see what the day-to-day life in a barrister is like. Go to your local courts, like Jonathan said, go and observe proceedings, trials. there are so many opportunities
and talk to the solicitors and barristers there.
Absolutely, yes. Yes.
Shy girls getting out, as it were. So just go and talk to people. Yeah.
And there's also the judicial shadowing scheme. You can apply and spend some time with the judge, whether that's district judge, circuit judge. I know I went to a seminar not so long ago, and there was a judge from the Old Bailey had come up for the day to give a keynote speech, and he had offered to all the attendees or the young students that had attended on that day, he said, I'll give my email address out. Anyone can email me and apply to spend some time with me, which I thought was very kind of him. So there are those opportunities. Also law clinics, lots of universities have law clinics. And also within universities, lots of mooting competitions, as I said. So pro bono work.
And all of that happening at BPP for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, and Jonathan, the last word, what advice would you give yourself if you could go back to when you were making that decision? And you may already feel you've answered it, not that I'm leading you. In that you were saying, look, don't be too rigid about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I'd be kind of just worry less and, believe in the conviction of your decision at the time, in the comfort that if it works out, great. If it doesn't, there's some flexibility potentially. Yeah.
Great.
And I just want to emphasize your point, Charlotte, that there's no rush. Time is on your side. I think that's really, really important. And if it means spending an extra year doing something else or working in something else, that's okay. I think, rush decisions are often the wrong ones.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys can all see these questions. There are more than 10. Clearly, we can't answer them all. Do you know what I'm going to say? I've just glanced at them. I'm going to say I feel most of these have been looked at, or have been addressed, actually. So I'm sure you're all listening. You were asking brilliant questions, but our three panelists have answered most of this, I'd say. Let's just pluck a few out. The very first one, if you were looking to go into a political career following being a lawyer, interesting. Would you recommend being a solicitor or a barrister? I don't know, Jonathan. We've got a few friends who've done that, who are barristers actually, but either I would say. But
either. I'd say if you look at the composition of Parliament, lawyers in Parliament, probably an even split between barristers and solicitors. Then you'd argue that maybe more barristers because of the proportionality in terms of numbers of the profession or the size of the profession. But I wouldn't say that matters too much.
Yeah. Okay. We've also got, and I think we've answered this, what skills it's just nice to wrap up with, what skills or experiences stand out most when you're looking at candidates without a law degree? I think John certainly made the point about transferable skills. Doesn't always have to be to do with the law. So transferable skills, we've really emphasized, especially in an AI world, the human skills side, the ability to flex, i.e. adapt. We've talked about being able to make decisions. So all of that stuff, I think we've covered that. Someone says, Lyana, both Lyana and John, why did Lyana and John switch from being solicitor to barrister? As I'm thinking of becoming a barrister, I am a solicitor in a firm. Toxicity is becoming unbearable. Well, that's not great. How difficult it is to switch and earn money. Yeah, that's the point, Christina. If you're really in a toxic environment, I would say you've got to get out. And that's when more independence might suit you because you're master of your own life a bit more, but there are downsides to it too. I'm just going to touch on these really, really briefly, just so you see we're addressing them. Is it possible to practice both in England, Timothy? I think that's what we're talking about. It kind of is, because you can take higher rights as a solicitor. Depends what kind of firm you're in. And also to Jonathan's point, it may fuse, as it is in many other jurisdictions, but the day isn't quite here yet. But it's beginning to get closer and closer, wouldn't you all say, the three of you?
I think what you can also say on that point as well is, so as you mentioned, as a solicitor, you can get your higher rights of audience, so you can pretty much do any aspect of the job as a solicitor. And what they've added now, I think it's probably been in place for about 10 years now, is barristers can have a litigation extension on their practicing certificates as well, meaning barristers can now do litigation. I don't have that on my certificate, but you can. Yeah.
Yeah. And Charlotte, just very quickly, I saw that there are some A-level students here, so who haven't been to university. One thing that I think I'd have done differently is that if I had known that doing a law degree wasn't essential, I may have chosen history. So I had the impression that I must do a law degree or else I'll be at a disadvantage. The point is, it doesn't make a difference actually at all. Obviously helps in the sense that you've got a year less to do perhaps, but if you're really passionate about another subject and you've got a chance to study it, consider that.
Yeah, you'll never have that opportunity again, really, realistically. I would add to that, and this is something I talk about pretty much every day, is the chambers, i.e. barrister side, or the law firms or the legal employers will want a mixture in their organisation. They'll want some with something different to the law before. They'll want some who studied the law. So they'll be looking to build up a mixture. I would also say this, top secret, is now actually for the SQE, very interesting. Now we're getting data through from several years of the SQE. So I'm talking about the solicitor side, that actually the students who do the conversion, so Jonathan's example, say they studied history, then they do the conversion, are actually, we're seeing, doing better in the SQE than the law students. It's not a great thing to be telling you this, but I'm telling you like it is. Why? Because it's more contemporaneous. For the SQE, you've got to know all the underlying law, the black letter law, as well as the practical stuff. And if you've done your conversion course the year before the SQE, it's fresher for you. So, there is that to consider too, which goes to Jonathan's point that do what the heck you want, frankly, and follow your passion before nailing your colours to the mast. Against that, it's going to be cheaper slightly because there'll be one less year. And I know for many, if not most of you, the funding is going to be an issue. That is the reality of life. Career changes, we've covered that, Isabella. Do you have any advice for career changes, especially those coming with relevant work experience? The answer to that is the chambers and the firms will love a career changer. Again, that's great in the mix. And you've got such relevant transferable experience, yours to sell. I'd say something like that. Anonymous, someone from a non-law background, what factors should I prioritise? Well, we've answered that in how to decide between solicitor and barrister. I'd say we've covered that. Could you clarify what is meant by the phrase chambers? Okay, well, I'm not going to answer it, John, and any of you, just really briefly because we're over time.
Okay, so chambers, it's a collective group of barristers. So in effect, the way that we operate, take my chambers, for example, 30 barristers all operate from the same roof. We have about 5 clerks who manage our diary. They're the ones who bring work in, bring our fees in, etc. And then at the end of the month, you pay rent to chambers for the pleasure of being a barrister there. So it's a collection of independent, self-employed barristers.
Yeah, and you get to talk to them about all your cases and all that stuff and collegiate and blah, blah, blah. Ethan, question for me. Charlotte, can you give any advice on the usefulness of firm-specific virtual internships such as those offered by Clifford Chance? They're all amazing. So the more of those VAC schemes, vacation schemes, virtual internships you can do, even they're really competitive. Of course, that's what's going to be looked at to see on your CV. There's very little experience that's not going to be useful. Everybody. Any guidance from the panel for lawyers qualified in other jurisdictions interested in becoming barristers? Well, Lyana talked about bar transfer test. That's still what's used for lawyers coming from different jurisdictions. But look, we can't do everything for you. You do need to do some research, everybody, and put it in that notebook, whether it's virtual or proper pen to paper. That's what you need to build up, starting from frankly, your first year at university, I would say. So you have 4 or 5 notebooks and you'll have all your answers in there. You can get a lot by attending these things, but this hard graft you're going to have to do. I'm setting you a piece of homework, everyone, not our panelists. An extra module I'm giving you if you're at university. So a 5th module is spending 2 hours a week. It's not a huge ask to research your future career, and you'll know where you need to begin, how far in you are. That is my best advice. You will then have a notebook full of it all, and you're going to wow in those applications and those interviews. I don't even think I can read anymore because there are so many.
No, that's fine, Charlotte. I was just going to say, I'm happy to wrap up. I saw there's one question which might be good to conclude on is sort of what are the pros and cons of solicitor and barrister. If you can quickly cover that, I think that'll be fine.
Yeah, although I think we did that one. Anyone?
Oh, did we?
Yeah, it's like independence, being your own master versus the security of, and it very much depends on your personality type then, the security of having the steady income coming in, the pension, the possibility to pay into a pension, all the structure, employment rights of being employed. But your time, frankly, when you're employed, belongs to someone else. I can't put it. I could put it more fiercely, but you know what I'm saying. You know, it belongs. Your time belongs to your employer. That's the bottom line. I have to do what they say. I'm employed.
Yeah.
I belong to BPP.
Yeah. And I'll pop a final poll on the screen for our audience, just for their key takeaway. And while people answer that, I'll just quickly go over the sort of outro that I'm going to do, just so we're not holding out panelists, because I'm sure they're all very busy. So thank you guys for interacting with this session. Before you go, just another reminder to attendees that we'll be sending out a link containing the recorded session, so please keep an eye out for that. There will also be a survey popping up once this masterclass has ended, so please fill that out to let us know how you enjoyed today and then what other topics you'd like us to see us cover in the future. And again, remember to also check out all our events that I mentioned earlier in the events page on lawcareers.net. Including the upcoming boot camps. And also remember to post about the masterclass on LinkedIn. Thank you very much once again to our excellent panelists.
Can I say something really quickly, Dimitar?
Yes, please.
Also, BPP events, look it up. It's just find our website, but bpp.com/events off the top of my head. I think we have events every single week. They're amazing. They're online. They're free. What's not to like? Secondly, Dimitar, please send me the results of that final survey. I'm really interested because I will shortly be posting on LinkedIn, and therefore I need to know what the audience felt.
100%. And I'll add a link to the BPP site in the follow-up email as well, so look out for that as well. But thank you very much again to our excellent panel today. Very enjoyable conversation. We hope you enjoyed from the audience side, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Thank you.
Thanks, and good luck, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And are my panelists happy to have their mugshots on a blurry LinkedIn photograph?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And are you okay to be tagged?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. You are fabulous panelists.
Oh, thanks, Charlotte. It's good to meet everyone as well.
Nice to meet everyone.
Likewise.
Take care. Thanks, Dimitar. Bye.
Thank you.
Safe travels, Don.
Oh, thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.